and welcome back to another episode of Coffee Shop Philosophy. As always, I'm your host, Killian Hobbs, managing editor at think-liberty.com and the news editor for the Being Libertarian family of publications. As always, you can follow us on all forms of social media. You can listen to our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me directly on Facebook by searching Killian Hobbs Author. And when you're on our websites, you can hit the little subscribe bell in order to get the daily updates for all of the articles that come out across our publications. For today's episode, I have a guest on here, Alan Chief Geek Gannon, who is our Chief Technical Officer, though his official title is actually the Chief Geek. He's the guy that works behind the scenes and gets everything actually running for us. So when you go to the websites and it looks clean and it loads properly and you're not waiting 10 seconds for an image to pop up, that's because of the stuff that he does in the background to make all the magic happen. So, Alan, welcome on the show.
Well, with all due respect, Vinny makes it look pretty. I make it go fast.
Yes. Credit given properly where it's due, yes. Vinny makes it pretty. You make it work. The reason that I've got Alan on today is to go through the concept of crypto-anarchy, as well as the ideas, implications on tech itself, the future of tech. There's a lot to that aspect that I find doesn't get discussed properly, or at least doesn't get discussed through a libertarian or anarchist lens. We just kind of look at it as the newest toy has come out, so we're going to go ahead and get that and not really think about the markets that are at play or the impact that it really has in our lives. So I guess what I'll start off, because you can explain it far better than I can. What is crypto-anarchy?
So crypto-anarchy is basically the cyberspatial realization of crypto-anarchism, if I can speak, of anarcho-capitalism. Sorry, I got crypto-anarchism so ingrained, I can't stop thinking about it. So basically, it was espoused in the late 1980s by Timothy C. May, who unfortunately had recently passed. And this guy was a genius, just so you know. He was a senior at Intel. He solved the alpha particle problem, which solved memory problems in the 1970s. So not some crazy kook out there. And he foresaw in the 1980s, you can read about it in the article on Being Libertarian. I think you'll have to find the name for that one. But it basically, he was talking about how the internet would be catering to anonymity and that there would be currencies that would develop that were allow for anonymous and secure transactions, and that eventually the government would be scared of these things and, talk about how we should be fearful and how we should allow backdoors in and all this. It's kind of interesting when you read it. He wrote this in like 1988, 1989, and you're reading it today and you're like, wow, a little bit foreboding, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that's frightening, actually.
I mean, to put this in perspective, this is 3 years before Linux even came into existence. Crypto-anarchism predated Linux. It was fully around when the free software movement was in the full swing under Richard Stallman, but you were still in the days of the proprietary Unix system. But you had Stanford, Berkeley, and all these other universities have these amazing open source communities starting to bubble up. But there wasn't a free operating system that people could just go around. The internet wasn't really around. So it's kind of amazing that you read that today and you would swear it was written like yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to say early 1980s, the internet would be less than 10 years old at that point. It would have just been like a cross net between a few universities, I think, at the time.
It wouldn't have been the internet at all at that point. The internet, as we know it, didn't come into existence until the 1990s with Sir Tim Berners-Lee with the hypertext markup language that we know today, which then gave rise to the internet. We're talking about back then, most of what people knew of was probably ARPANET through the military and university studies.
Yeah, the precursor. Sorry, it was ARPANET that I meant. I just mixed them together. This is why I have Alan on to discuss this stuff, because I am not an expert on this, whereas he is. So,
Yeah, and to give you an idea of my pedigree, my dad actually worked on the Hubble Space Telescope and coded the shutters in Fortran when he was in the Air Force. So, long pedigree of geeks.
I think at best I can lay claim to being in the country that came up with that big arm. That's about all I got going. But I've heard of crypto-anarchy, but I've also heard of the concept of techno-libertarianism.
So techno-libertarianism is it's definitely has overlaps with crypto-anarchism. You can kind of think of it as like minarchism to the tech world. Where they kind of still understand that there has to be some kind of a governmental order, which is kind of weird when everyone that knows me knows I'm a minarchist, but I'm a crypto-anarchist as well in the tech world. And then you're talking about, this techno-libertarianism is kind of the minarchism, and it's kind of the opposite of where I view in the real world. So it's just interesting. So the biggest example of a techno-libertarian would be Julian Assange. So Julian Assange does recognize that there, are governments and that there needs to be at least some kind of order with technology in regards to regulations and such. Whereas I argue that regulation is a hindrance to the internet, that anything good that you try to propose for regulation can actually be turned backwards. For example, the SESTA-FOSTA regulation to stop sex trafficking here in America, or you're talking about Article 13 in the European Union, or the current copy, the linking directive that does not allow Germany or Spain to have those articles linked out, like the EUCD proposes, which is why Google, if you actually ever look for articles that are in Spain or Germany, it is very hard to find Google to give you one.
I'll have to actually give that a try. I've never run into that issue.
It's because they have to pay the link tax now. And that link tax was with the good purpose of paying publishers, such as being libertarian, their, quote, fair share they're entitled to. But the problem is, all that essentially turns into is a tax on content.
Which is really interesting when you think about it, because the content is accessed for free.
Right.
So taxing something that you get for free, how do you put a percentile tax on something that's worth $0, at least as far as physical money being exchanged between users? It's just...
Well, that's going to be more confusing when you say physical money between users. Well, when you're talking about cryptocurrency.
Oh, yeah, that's a completely different animal.
Yeah, that's an amazing beast as well.
I find it funny, and maybe you can shed some commentary on this or some thoughts. I find that the funniest thing with blockchain technology is that it's only really focused in on the currency aspect. Like, there's tons of other potential uses for this kind of technology, but almost all of it goes towards creating new forks off Bitcoin.
Well, you have to remember, did you ever read Satoshi Nakamoto's paper of why he released Bitcoin?
No, I haven't read the paper. I know that I know some of the ideas that were behind it at first, but I haven't read the actual paper that was involved.
So I was one of the people that actually saw Bitcoin in the early days, but I'm also one of the people that wishes he took it a little bit more seriously when he saw it in the early days. Because when I say the early days, I remember being on the Linux kernel forums where he announced this.
Damn.
So I remember reading it and I'm like, good for you. I wish you the best. And I even, took a little, computer I had here and there. I'm an IT consultant. So, if you haven't gotten to know me yet, I have at least at my disposal at any given time, 5 or 6 computers just lying around. And we're not just talking like old computers. We're talking about decent powered ones. And I mined a little bit here and there. And the funny thing is that little mining here and there, I did for some reason keep those hard drives, and it paid for my house. Well, most of it, but it was kind of interesting that they focus in on that. And it goes into Satoshi Nakamoto's paper about how he designed it to compete against the current financial structure. The whole reason Bitcoin was created was out of the disgust of the financial situation and the recession that had happened in 2009. Remember, this is the whole situation that was going on in the United States. Obama was in, the economy was tanking. That's when Bitcoin came about.
Something that actually had a bit more backing to it rather than the fiat currencies that most nations use right now.
Right. I mean, the guy spending 10,000 Bitcoin on the first ever transaction on pizza probably doesn't think so, but
10,000 Bitcoins on a pizza. Good God.
Well, to be fair, when it first started, I mean, there are people in Being Libertarian that can confirm that I made this prediction. I remember several years ago. I want to say it was 2016 because Trump was being going to be elected. Early on in the year, I made this prediction. I said, "Everyone buy Bitcoin now. I know it's very low right now. We're talking a few $100s. I'm telling you, by 2020, it's going to be $2,000." Everyone always laughs because my estimations are always conservative and super conservative.
Yeah, it skyrocketed.
Yeah, and I remember, see, the problem is when you're a crypto-anarchist and a libertarian, period, is you're usually the one that makes the most sense in the room. And I'm not just saying that as a libertarian, but when you think about it from the Socratic method of how you get to a lot of things in libertarianism, you have less conflicts with the Socratic method in libertarianism than you do, say, in liberalism versus conservatism. I'm using the American terms for anyone that's listening, by the way. So please don't stick me on a pike when I say liberal is left. That is just how Americans see it. So I apologize. But back to what I was saying. So crypto-anarchists are even worse because we're the ones that are raising all the alarm bells about everything. I mean, you have to admit, Killian, you've known me for quite a while, and I always seem like the crazy paranoid guy. And then always like a few months later, you're like, you know what? Alon is vindicated for thinking that way a few months ago now.
Oh yeah. Like when it comes to tech, I don't even ask questions at this point. Like I think the funniest one was the story you shared about, it was the doctor's office with an Alexa.
Oh yeah, that's happened several times.
Oh God, that was hilarious. Hey Wiretap, how are you doing?
Oh, by the way, that new enterprise network I'm putting in my house because I'm paranoid and want to isolate and hibernate. Okay, the backstory for anyone that's listening. My girlfriend said she likes Alexa and wanted it in our house, and everyone knows as a man we can't say no to the woman, so that just means compromising. And compromising to an IT guy when you want to put Alexa in the home means spending $4,500 on a network for the house.
Just to close it off.
Just to close it off. And I decided what the network is going to be called for the wireless, for just the Internet of Things devices, because there's going to be 8 different wireless networks in this house.
Yeesh.
Ready for it?
Sure.
Not today, NSA.
Yeah, really. Oh, it's hilarious when we look at this stuff, really. Like, I remember there was a post I saw. I can't remember if you posted it or someone else or just a random page, but where it talked about the difference between a tech enthusiast and someone who's actually into tech. Mm-hmm. Whereas like the tech enthusiast will be the one that's like, oh yeah, I've got the Google Home Mini and it gets my TV to turn on automatically and it'll change my lights and I can pull this up with my smartphone when I'm at a different place and I can do this and I can do that and it's all amazing. Mm-hmm. And then you have the person that's actually into tech that uses pen and paper and keeps a Glock next to their printer just in case it makes a funny noise.
Which is true. Like this is the way crypto anarchists think. It's a little exaggeration with the gun thing, but it really is serious as a crypto anarchist. When I build a home theater PC, like when most people are like, I'm going to get a Kodi box. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know if I can trust the hardware. So I actually build a computer, put Linux on it, put Kodi on it, which is open source that I know I can trust. And then the only proprietary software in there, because Netflix runs on it, is Chrome. But now I'm switching to Brave browser because I've been using that and that works fine with Netflix and everything. So I'm happy for that.
On a similar note then, for the average person, right? Because most people don't have the wherewithal or the ability to kind of build a network from scratch like that. But what would you say the average person could best do to protect themselves from potentially invasive forms of technology or potentially invasive software that might be in things that are becoming standard software or hardware pieces?
Well, the honest truth is with technology, there's this tightrope you have to walk between convenience and security, because there is, of course, the trade-off between convenience and that security. That is really a question people will personally have to ask, because if you really want to consider not, being potential backdoors intentionally, as I'm an IT guy, I work with Windows all the time, and I'm saying I know this is impossible for a lot of people to do. Get away from Windows and Mac. The problem is those two operating systems are closed off and proprietary, and we know for a fact the National Security Agency and others have forced the either Microsoft or Apple, Google, or others to have backdoors or intentionally leave backdoors open that they can't patch the fix for. We know this for a fact. WikiLeaks had it all over the place. I've published stories on it at Being Libertarian on how the tools were leaked. Edward Snowden talked about it. And there's a journalist, I forget what her name was, but she described her Mac was being turned on in the middle of the night. So yes, for you Mac users out there, I will personally tell you, I have personally disinfected many Mac computers. So no, you are not impervious. In fact, you're kind of worse.
Yeah, because there's less general software that you can get on a Mac. Like I run into...
well, I mean more so because that false sense of security with Mac.
Yeah.
That is the biggest flaw. Whereas Windows people know, hey, I need antivirus here. Mac people think they don't. I had a client that seriously, of course, one thing we recommend for all businesses is a firewall. So, one I do recommend for businesses, is WatchGuard. I personally prefer PFSense, but if you are not very, very technical and don't want to be so hands-on and want guaranteed support, that's more prompt, WatchGuard's the one. They actually told us when we went to the renewal, they didn't need it anymore because they switched all their computers over to Mac. The same day, I actually published that, I shared that piece in our group and tagged a few of our Mac user friends. I think I only tagged Vinny on how there's a Mac malware out there now in the wild. They don't know how it gets in. This was only like 2 or 3 days ago. I read it. That actually is designed to steal your cookies and your SMS text messages off of your Mac in order to steal your cryptocurrency from your exchanges and wallets. So that's on a Mac.
Yeah, I remember way back, Mac used to advertise itself as you can't get a virus on here, but really that had more to do, at least like this was my take on it when I first saw those advertisements from years ago, was, the reason there's less likely to get a virus on there was because most people using Apple products are using very basic and streamlined parts of it. They're not looking for any of the depth that you might get out of a Windows or Linux device.
Correct.
And there just wasn't a lot of software that wasn't proprietary to begin with where those kind of options were even available. Like there was nothing.
The bigger thing that protects Mac is protection from protection through obscurity, which basically means that not enough people use it. And this is what I had to explain to a lot of our clients, is the reason Mac gets less infections and stuff is the same reason as Linux. Linux is still very popular for servers, so it's kind of iffy on that one. I don't want to get into that because that's a whole long few hour discussion on that. But because of that, let's see. Mac is what I think like a 2% market share of all computers out there, not counting servers, if I recall. I may be wrong. But let's just say 2%, sounds right. You still talk about making a virus for 2% of people versus 98% of people.
Yeah. And that's assuming that you're going to get X amount of people out of that 2%.
Right.
Which, just considering the behavioral side, most people aren't going to be using their Macs for that. It's like, right. I run into that with the cell phone industry because I do cell phone sales for my day job. The sales
used
manager.
To do that. I do not envy you.
Yeah, that's a completely different animal.
I used to do cell repair too, so good luck.
Oh, thank God I don't have to do that. I mean, I do the troubleshooting stuff with customers, obviously, but I don't have to actually do any of the physical repair, which is great.
One of the reasons I actually get an iPhone personally, and for the record out there, anyone, no, I don't like iPhone. I just hate it less than Android. The reason why I get an iPhone is I know it can be supported, but also if I get one iPhone, I know I can get the parts for it either from another iPhone or somebody on eBay. Whereas I know from experience with HTC, you break a button, good luck finding it.
Yeah, with Android devices, unless you're breaking, unless you have a Samsung, good luck.
But even with Samsung, you have to get a special account with them.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have popped open actual repair centers that you can just buy parts out of now, and they're slowly rolling out more and more each year, so that balances out a bit. But
I think this may roll into another part of crypto-anarchism, and the discussion is right to repair. Because this is another topic. This is actually growing across the United States. Now, the biggest proponent of this is Louis Rossmann, who is the most popular cell phone and MacBook, well, not cell phone, MacBook repair store. And the right to repair essentially means it's my hardware. I own it. I have the right to be able to repair it however the manufacturer is able to as well. And I believe with that with all my heart, because it's my hardware. There is no reason that I should have to go back to the manufacturer and they tell me, no, there's nothing we can do about it. You're just going to have to, suck it up. Because you have companies like Apple that will even go so far that they won't even allow you to repair your own devices. In the United States, Canada, I don't know about that, but we've already won a few battles in this where, those the warranty void if removed stickers.
Yeah.
Those are not enforceable in the United States.
Good.
So if I do that, I can still go for warranty. In the 1970s, the United States required that automobiles require that the manufacturers provide the same tools. It gets really stupid, and I think we need further steps there because I'm running into this issue with my Jeep right now. So the computer died on it. And ironically, the IT guy can't fix his own computer. I have to take it to a shop that has a special computer that they spend $10,000 on. And then they have a dedicated computer hooked up to this that they have to call the dealership for, that they have a guy remote into and give them just that specific version of the software for my computer to be flashed. And that single flashing costs several $100s. I know for a fact that the flashing equipment to actually do it can be done free and open source, and that the actual hardware should cost me no more than maybe $50 to, flash it myself. So I don't know why that still happens when every car today has a computer and it's a component that dies within 10 years. But then we have another side of right to repair where Tesla actually doesn't allow people to repair their cars at all because the law is written that they must provide the same tools and software and such provided to the dealers, but Tesla doesn't have dealers.
So they've got that. They got a little bit of a loop around.
Right. And then Apple is in a whole thing. They actually work with customs. So they actually go so far to be such a dick that they actually, if you ever open their phone, I'm serious, this is a total dick move. This is literally just like rubbing my dick all over the phone kind of equivalent. They put an Apple on every piece of equipment in the iPhone. I kid you not. Open it up, the ribbon cables and everything. And they solely do that so they can claim copyright on every single one of those parts. So even if you import a part and it's a reproduction, not a knockoff, but a reproduction, they claim copyright and can seize it, and you can't do anything about it.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that happens to batteries, screens, cables. You're talking everything. Apple doesn't want people to repair their stuff. Then they tell people, and then they have authorized repair centers that they basically neuter because they don't provide the adequate instructions or tools to their third-party centers. They want you to go to the Apple stores, but the Apple stores are so backed up. They don't really have repairing built into their model. That's just not the Mac way, which is counterintuitive to the message that they give to everyone that they're environmentally friendly and they, don't put waste into this earth. Well, what's more wasteful than having to buy a new computer when you can repair one?
Yeah, really. That falls under, it's planned obsolescence. That's what that is, really.
It really is.
Just a bad approach to business, I find.
I have no problem with planned obsolescence so long as we have the capability to keep the product alive. Like Atari computers or even, let's go more recent, DOS boxes from the 1990s. You can still repair those. I mean, it's going to be hard to find the parts for a lot of them, but you can still keep them alive. You can still repair them. There are people that are dedicated out there to making, third-party repair parts for them. That's how it should be. But we have such a muck of trademark. And part of the problem as well is I was looking into this. Disney actually kind of messed up things too.
Oh, yeah. I remember I did that piece on some of the changes that Orrin Hatch was bringing to IP and its relation to just media on the internet and all of the potential damage that's going to come out of that. I had that piece a couple months back. Just came into law, I think, just before the end of the last Congress. But yeah, don't get me started on the IP problems. We could go on for like 5 hours about everything that's wrong with the way we've got IP established.
But let's go on to like the intellectual property topic of crypto-anarchism, because that's one topic I think a lot of people don't understand is, definitely, because they're like, oh, you're a Linux user? Can you pirate me Windows for me? We're not software pirates. We are not in any way that, some of us are. But crypto-anarchism does not mean we endorse, pirating software. We endorse ethical, free, Libre, and open source software. We will always find an alternative that is ethical. And when we say ethical, we mean that the code is not locked up and proprietized. We believe that ideas are free. We believe that code is speech and should be freely shared. And the only requirement we have with our code is give credit where credit is due. That is really the only requirement in a crypto-anarchist society. It's a true meritocracy. Because when you look at the free, Libre, and open source software movement, it is the quintessential epitome of a voluntarist society. No one is forced to use it. No one is forced to contribute. No one is forced to do anything.
Mm-hmm. And yet people still organize themselves, work on massive projects, come up with a bunch of different plugins. I mean, pretty much everything that I write for the website, I write using Libre because it stands for those.
About 98% of the stack we use at Being Libertarian is open source. Most of my day is running on Linux. And that's as someone who services Windows. And when I need Windows, I open up VirtualBox, an open source virtual machine, and then just run Windows inside of that and close it when I'm done. And the great thing about free, Libre, and open source software from a crypto-anarchist standpoint of view is the transparency and security that comes along with it. Because we have what is called Linus law, which is a law in programming that basically the more bugs that are, the more eyes that are available, the bugs, the less. I'm trying to remember how exactly translate it because it's kind of weird how Linus Torvalds said it. But basically, the more eyes on a problem, the more problems are easily able to be seen and solved. Mm-hmm. And that is very easily seen because if you compare Microsoft, for example, Microsoft, as of a decade ago, was a lot larger in how they developed their operating systems. I think nobody will will argue that Windows 7 and XP were leaps and bounds more stable and less clunky than Windows 8, 8.1, and 10. Mm-hmm. Windows 10, Microsoft actually removed most of their beta testing community. That's when they introduced the Windows Insider program so that you could beta test the software for bugs and everything. But there's a quintessential difference between the Microsoft community and the open source community in Linux. See, the Linux community, when we go on beta, we know full well there are issues going forward, and we are fully expected and ready to bug report any of those issues to help out people downstream. Microsoft people, the average IT person, when they see inside track and they see beta software, they see, oh, that means new features, possibly buggy. Okay, I'll take the risk. They're not as likely to bug report. And that is the quintessential problem that you will have with Windows. And that's why you have so many issues with Windows. I mean, Windows had an update that actually deleted Personal's My Documents folder. I'm not even joking. This happened like a month or two ago.
Like I don't use those types of folders. I just create my own folders on the desktop, so I might not have even noticed because I use it on this computer myself. And
I mean, it's like you talk about your Windows updates before you came on. You had a Windows update just come on when you wanted it. And in a crypto-anarchist view, we believe that it's our hardware. We should be able to control it as well. Windows doesn't allow you that. And when most people don't realize that our servers at Being Libertarian are automatically updating everything on nightly. You saw the joke where Caitlin was working late at night.
Yeah.
And she's like, Alon, the server broke again. And I'm like, the server reboots at 3:00 in the morning, Caitlin. Stop working late. Go to bed. And nobody would notice if Caitlin wasn't on that the server is automatically doing updates and everything, and nobody notices.
Yeah.
It's doing updates about every day.
I mean, some people would notice because we do have fans in South Africa, throughout Europe, so on and so forth. So they might,
it's an SSD,
those people might see it, but
30 seconds tops.
Yeah, exactly. It's a minor thing that it's going to be down for. Caitlin just had the ability to pinpoint the exact minute that she needed to go to the website, and that was the minute that it was being done.
She's meticulous. That's the problem.
Yeah.
She's too well organized. That's her problem.
She's going to like shoot me for us mentioning that and making fun of it on the show. It's going to be great.
Oh, she's
going to listen to this, and like 2 or 3 days later, after this episode comes out, she's going to listen to that part. Then she's going to start yelling and screaming at me and you for making fun of how organized she is. And we're not going to hear the end of it for about a week.
I fully expect it.
I'm prepared.
I'm not going to mention the nickname I have for her. She knows what the nickname is. Everyone does. It's funny. I'm not going to mention it publicly.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap everything up here. Was there anything else that you wanted to say or anything specific you wanted to plug or anything like that before we close things off?
What I would really plug right now is, if you want to check out a great browser right now, the Brave web browser is one that I've been testing out for several weeks. It includes a BitTorrent client, Tor browser. It's got ad blocker, and Being Libertarian, Think Liberty, and Rational Standard are all partnered with the Brave Rewards program. So while you are browsing, if you don't want to see those ads, feel free to tip us some cryptocurrency.
Awesome. I know some people were a little upset about the Patreon because of the controversy with Sargon and a few others that was going on with it. But for those of you that were interested, we've got like 12 other options for people that want to dodge the Patreon option that are all built in.
Bitcoin, Litecoin, PayPal, Patreon, and now Brave Rewards that you can contribute directly through the site using Basic Attention Token. Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And we will be adding more.
Excellent. We'll definitely keep you posted. And I think I'll have you on at a later date for, there's a couple things we could dive into. Obviously, the episode, I got to keep it a little on the shorter side, but.
Oh, there's a lot of things we can go over.
Definitely going to have you back on again, though. So for everyone out there, again, you can follow our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on all forms of social media, including following Alan, Chief Geek Gannon. The geek is spelled G-Y-K rather than regular geek spelling, but you can find him on Facebook as well.
And Twitter.
And Twitter. So you can find me on just Facebook. I don't really bother with Twitter myself, but you can find Killian Hobbs Author on Facebook. You can find him on Facebook, on Twitter. You can find everything we do pretty much everywhere. And as always, if you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, I'll see you again next week.